My hands have never lied to me. Every object I touch remembers, and it hands me the truth whether I want it or not. So when I picked up my mate's coat and felt a stranger's warmth still breathing in the wool, I already knew. I just wasn't ready to know it yet. My name is Silas Vance, and I have spent 24 years pretending my hands were normal. They are not. I read things. Not palms, not tea leaves, nothing that adorable. I touch something, and it shows off its whole history like a kid who just learned a magic trick. A coffee mug tells me who cried into it at 2 a.m. A car door tells me who slammed it and why. People call it a gift. I call it the reason I wear gloves to Thanksgiving. I live in Ashford Hollow, a packed town tucked into the White Mountains, where New Hampshire gets so quiet in October, you can hear the leaves deciding to fall. Diner on Main, one gas station that also sells fishing bait and wedding cards, which tells you everything about the priorities here. I run the little repair shop off Route 3, fixing watches, radios, anything with a memory I can feel. Turns out reading objects is great for customer service and terrible for dating. Except I did date. I bonded. I found my mate at 19 and thought the universe had finally decided to be nice to me for once. Wesley. Wesley Cole, with the crooked smile and the hands that always smelled like cedar and warm bread. He was the first person whose touch didn't flood me with anyone else's leftovers. When he held me, I felt only him. Do you know what that means for someone like me? Silence. Beautiful, aching silence. For the first time, my head shut up. "You're doing the thing again," he told me once, watching me strip off my gloves to trace the counter where he'd left his keys. What thing? The thing where you look at me like I'm a puzzle you're scared to solve. I laughed and kissed him instead of answering. Because he was right, and because I was a coward who preferred the puzzle unsolved. Here is the thing about a gift like mine. You get very, very good at not using it on the people you love. You learn to keep your hands to yourself. You learn to want the silence so badly that you start ignoring the little flickers. The whisper of a scent that shouldn't be on his collar. The way his phone gave me a jolt of guilt when I moved it off the nightstand, so fast I told myself I imagined it. I told myself a lot of things that autumn. I told myself my sister Nora had just been busy, which was why she stopped coming around. I told myself Wesley worked late, because the mill really did need him. I told myself the cold spot I felt every time I touched our front door was the weather. The truth is, my hands had been screaming at me for weeks. I just kept turning up the music. My best friend Theo noticed first. He always does. Beta, blunt, allergic to sugarcoating. "You look like a man who's been swallowing his own gut feeling," he said, dropping into the chair across from me at the diner, stealing my fries before I could guard them. "I look like a man who's been on some—" "There's a difference." "Is there?" He chewed, watching me. "Take off a glove. Touch that." He slid Wesley's spare keychain across the table. Wesley had left it in Theo's truck last week. "No." "Why not?" "Because I already know." I didn't say that. I said, because eating fries is a two-handed job, and you've eaten most of mine. He didn't laugh. That was the part that scared me. That week, the whole hollow was buzzing about something bigger than my quiet little heartbreak. The Thorn Kings were coming down from the Northern Territory. 3 brothers, born the same hour. 3 alphas ruling one throne. People said their scent could stop a room. People said one of them could look at a lie and watch it die. I didn't care about kings. I cared about the way my own house had started to smell like a stranger's cologne under Wesley's cedar. But I felt them anyway. That is the part I can't explain. 2 nights before everything broke, I touched the shop counter to lock up, and instead of the usual hum, I got a flash. The universe, of course, does not take requests. Friday. Wesley said he was working a double. I made his favorite anyway, the terrible casserole he loved, and I pretended to. I packed it in the good dish. I drove it to the mill because I am, at heart, a romantic idiot. The mill lot was empty. His truck wasn't there. I stood holding a warm casserole in a cold parking lot, and for one long second I let myself feel nothing at all. Then I did the thing I swore I'd never do. I peeled off my right glove. I pressed my bare palm flat against his truck's absence, against the oil stain where it always parked, against the memory soaked into the concrete. And the ground gave me everything. Cedar, warm bread, and underneath it, impossibly, a scent I had known my entire life. A scent from birthday cakes and skinned knees and every good memory I owned. My sister. The casserole slipped. The dish cracked on the pavement, and I barely heard it. My hands, my traitorous, honest hands, had finally said the thing out loud, and there was no music left to drown it. I got back in my car. I drove to Nora's house on Willow Bend, the one place I'd been avoiding, and I didn't let myself think, because thinking would make me stop. Wesley's truck was in the driveway. The porch light was off. And through the window, in the dark, I heard my sister laugh the way she only laughs when she's happy, and I heard my mate laugh back. I stood on the steps with one glove on and one glove off, my hand hovering over the doorknob, knowing that the second I touched it, it would show me everything. I touched it anyway. The doorknob was cold brass, and it did not care about my feelings. It gave me the whole thing at once, the way it always does, a flood with no mercy in it. Wesley's hand on this knob, again and again, weeks of it. The little turn of his wrist that I knew better than my own name, and every time, the door had felt him coming with a kind of eagerness that made my stomach fold in half. He was happy here. That was the part that broke something loose in my chest, not the guilt I expected, the happiness. He had been happy walking through this door. I let go like the brass had teeth. For a second, I just stood there on Nora's porch, one glove on, one glove off, listening to two people I loved laugh in the dark on the other side of a wall. The autumn air smelled like wood smoke and rot, that sweet dead leaf smell New Hampshire gets right before the cold makes everything honest. My breath came out white, my hands were shaking, and not from the temperature. I want to tell you I kicked the door in. I want to tell you I said something devastating, something they'd carry for years. What I actually did was knock, politely, like a Jehovah's Witness. The laughing stopped. I heard the scramble. The specific awful choreography of two people who suddenly remember the world exists. A chair, a whispered word, feet. The door opened, and there was Wesley, cedar and warm bread, and a shirt he'd buttoned wrong in his hurry, and behind him, framed in the hallway light with a blanket clutched to their chest, was my sister. Nobody said anything. We just breathed at each other like idiots. "So," I said finally, my voice came out steadier than I had any right to. "The mill let you off early." Wesley's face did about 4 things at once and landed on none of them. "Silas. That's my name." Wearing it out already. I looked past him, at Nora, at the blanket, at the cedar scent I could taste from here, and I felt my whole life quietly rearrange its furniture. "Hi, Nora. Love what you've done with my mate." "Silas, it isn't." Nora's voice cracked on the second word. "It isn't what you think." There it is. The oldest sentence in the world, the one people say when it is exactly, precisely what you think, when it is somehow worse than what you think. "It isn't what I think," I repeated. I laughed, and it scraped on the way out. "That's funny, because I don't think. I know. That's kind of my whole thing, remember?" I held up my bare hand and wiggled the fingers. "Congratulations. You picked the one person in the hollow who can read the exact history off your doorknob. Really rolled the dice on that one." Wesley flinched. He knew what my hands did. He was the only one who'd ever made them quiet. And now here he was, the loudest lie I'd ever touched. "How long?" I said. "Silas. How long, Wes?" He didn't answer, which was of course the answer. His silence had a shape, and the shape was months. Something in me that had been holding its breath since I was 19, finally, quietly, let go. I felt the bond between us, that warm thread that used to hum when he was near, and I felt it thin out to nothing. It didn't snap. That would have been dramatic, and I would have preferred dramatic. It just went slack, like a rope somebody stopped pulling. "Say something," Nora whispered. "Please. Yell. Do anything. Don't just stand there being calm. You're scaring me." "I'm scaring you." I looked at my sister, at the face I'd wiped clean of birthday cake frosting when we were kids, at the person who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms, because my hands could tell her the storm outside was an old one, harmless, already fading. That's the part that scares you. She started to cry. Wesley reached for me, and every alarm bell my body owned went off at once. "Don't." The word came out low and even, and it stopped his hand mid-air. "If you touch me right now, I will see all of it. Every time. Every place. I will know it the way I know my own hands, and I am not strong enough to carry that and still drive home. So do me one kindness in your entire pathetic life, and keep your hands to yourself." He kept his hands to himself. I turned around. That's the whole heroic ending of the confrontation. I turned around and walked down the porch steps, past the cracked casserole dish I'd left in my own driveway a lifetime ago and would never see again, and I got in my car. Behind me, Wesley said my name one more time, out into the cold. I did not look back. If I'd looked back, my hands might have reached for the porch rail, and the porch rail would have told me how many times he'd stood there watching my sister's window, and I had reached my absolute limit on knowing things for one night. I drove. Not home. Home smelled like him. Home had our door, and I was never touching a door again if I could help it. I drove out past the gas station that sold bait and wedding cards, past the diner where Theo had slid me those keys, and I'd already known, and I let the mountains swallow the road. Here is a thing nobody tells you about a bonded pair splitting. It doesn't just hurt in your heart, it hurts in your teeth, it hurts in the roots of your hair. My whole body was mourning a person my brain had already filed under stranger, and the two of them would not stop arguing. I pulled over on the shoulder where the trees opened up, and you could see the whole valley of lights below, tiny and gold and completely unbothered by me. I put my forehead on the steering wheel, and for the first time since the doorknob, I let myself feel the size of it. My mate, my sister, not one betrayal, two, holding hands. I didn't sob. I'm not a sobber. It's undignified and it clogs your nose. I just sat there and leaked, quietly, furiously, while the engine ticked and cooled. When I finally lifted my head, my bare hand was pressed flat to the dashboard, and I hadn't even noticed doing it. Old habit. Reach for something solid, let it steady you. But the car didn't show me my own memories. It showed me rain, 3 shapes standing in it. 3 heartbeats, wrong and perfect, closer now than the last time, close enough that one of them turned, in the vision, as if he'd felt me looking. And a voice I had never heard said, clear as a bell inside my skull, there he is. Every hair on my body stood up. I yanked my hand back, heart slamming, and stared at the dark road ahead where my headlights died into the trees. Somewhere out there, something had just found me, and my first fully formed thought was that I refused to be found on the worst night of my life. Absolutely not. I had standards. If 3 mysterious heartbeats wanted to make an entrance into my tragedy, they could get in line behind my mate and my sister and take a number. I put the car in drive with a hand that only shook a little. The vision let go of me the way a bad dream does, slow, leaving its fingerprints behind. But the voice stayed. There he is. 2 words, and they had landed in me somewhere older than language, somewhere that recognized them, even though every rational part of my brain was filing a formal complaint. I have spent my whole life feeling other people's history through my fingertips. I know the difference between a stray thought and a summons. That had been a summons. Something had reached across the dark and touched me first, and I didn't like being on the receiving end for once. Nope, I told the empty car. Not tonight. Tonight I'm busy. I drove until the Gold Valley lights disappeared behind me, and the road turned to the kind of dark that only exists this far north, where the trees lean in like they're trying to read over your shoulder. And somewhere in that dark, between 1 mile marker and the next, the plan arrived. Not a dramatic plan. I want to be clear about that. I did not stand on a cliff and swear vengeance to the moon. What happened was quieter and, I think, meaner. I did the math. I thought about walking back into the diner on Monday. About the way the whole hollow would already know, because towns like mine run on a fuel made entirely of other people's disasters. I thought about the pity casseroles. I thought about touching the register at my own shop and feeling Wesley's guilt soaked into the counter where he used to lean and wait for me to close up. I thought about my sister showing up on my step in 6 months with a look on her face that wanted forgiveness, and how I would have to feel her whole history the second she reached for me. And I thought, I could just not. I could just be gone. Let them explain it. Let Wesley stand in the diner and feel the whole town read his face. Let the story of where I went become a thing they had to carry, instead of a thing that happened to me. The hollow loved a mystery. Fine, I'd give them one, and take my hands with me. By the time I pulled into my own driveway, past the sad, cracked casserole dish glinting in my headlights, I wasn't grieving anymore. I was packing. The house did what houses do. It grabbed at me. I touched the light switch and got the memory of Wesley flicking it 1,000 times, humming off key. I touched the closet door and got the smell of him folded into every coat, so I stopped touching things. I put both gloves on, thick leather, the ones I wear when I need my hands to shut up, and I moved through my own home like a burglar robbing a stranger. Clothes. Cash from the coffee can, because a man who reads objects does not trust cards and never has. My tools, wrapped in cloth. The one photo of my mother I'd never let myself scan, because I wasn't ready to know what her last day felt like. That went in the bag first. I did not take a single thing Wesley had touched. Not the mug, not the spare key, not the stupid crooked watch he'd given me that I'd fixed 6 times. I left it all sitting there like evidence. Then I stood in the middle of my emptied-out living room, breathing hard, gloves on, bag on my shoulder, and I felt the pull again. It came up through the floor. I want you to understand I was standing perfectly still, but the floorboards under my boots had gone warm, that same impossible heat from the shop counter, from the dashboard, and this time I didn't get a vision. I got a direction. My whole body turned north before I decided to, like a compass needle that finally found its pole, and everything in me leaned toward the door and the mountains beyond it, and the 3 heartbeats waiting somewhere in the rain that hadn't started falling yet. "Oh, that's not creepy at all," I said out loud, mostly to steady myself. My voice bounced around the bare room. Cool, 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 cool. My body's got a GPS to strangers now. Great time for that. Perfect. I planted my feet and refused it. That's the part I'm almost proud of. Every instinct I had, the deep animal omega part that most days I keep on a short leash, wanted to walk north. It was practically whining, and I stood in my empty house with a broken bond still aching in my teeth, and I told it no. I had just been chosen and unchosen in the same week by the 2 people I trusted most. I was not about to hand my whole self over to a pull I didn't understand, just because it felt warm. Warm is how you get burned. Cedar was warm. Warm bread was warm. Look how that turned out. Whoever you are, I said to the floor, to the north, to the rain that was thinking about it, you can want me all you like. I'm going the other way. And I did. I got in my car. I turned it south, away from the pull, away from the hollow, away from every door that knew my name. My hands hurt from gripping the wheel through the leather. The compass needle in my chest screamed the whole time. Wrong way, but I have been ignoring my own instincts my entire life. This was the one thing I was actually good at. The gas station with the bait and the wedding cards was closed. I filled up anyway from the pump that took cash, and while the tank filled I made the mistake, the small human mistake, of pulling off one glove to count the bills. My fingers brushed the pump handle. And the pump, of all the dumb objects in the world, this greasy roadside pump that 100 strangers touched a day, lit up under my skin with something that had no business being there. 3 men, standing right here, at this pump. Not in a vision, not in the rain, but here, real, recent, hours ago at most. 3 heartbeats I already somehow knew, and one of them had pressed his palm to this exact handle and thought, clear and patient and certain. A single sentence that dropped into me like a stone into still water. We'll wait as long as it takes. I let go of the pump. Slowly, I turned around and looked at the dark road south, the road I'd chosen, my clever little escape route. They'd already been here. They were ahead of me, and my body had the audacity to feel relieved about it. I shoved that feeling down where it belonged, next to my dignity and my ability to pick trustworthy mates. Whatever these 3 were, they'd stood at this pump hours ago, calm as churchgoers, and decided to wait for me like I was a package that hadn't shipped yet. That should have terrified me. It mostly annoyed me. There is nothing more insulting than being certain about a person who hasn't agreed to be certain about you. You'll wait as long as it takes, I said to the pump, mocking, my breath fogging. Sure, big talk from a guy who touches gas station equipment with his bare hands. Do you know where those have been? The pump, mercifully, had nothing else to add. I paid. I got back in the car. And now I had a problem, which was that both directions had a catch in them. North had the pull, that warm, insistent compass thing dragging at my ribs. South had 3 strangers who apparently knew my travel plans before I did. That's the kind of choice that makes you sit in a freezing car at a closed gas station, reconsidering every decision that led you here, starting with being born. So I did the only sensible thing. I went a third way. There's a service road off Route 3 that the mill trucks use. Unpaved, ugly, the kind of road that doesn't show up on anything with a screen. I'd fixed the radio for the guy who plows it. I knew it dead-ended at an old logging cabin nobody had touched in years, And nobody touching things was exactly the vacation my hands were dreaming of. I killed my headlights halfway down so the dark could hide me, and I drove by moonlight and muscle memory, tires crunching, the trees closing up behind me like a zipper. The cabin was right where my memory left it, slumped, gray, one window boarded, home sweet nobodies. I sat in the car a minute with the engine ticking. No warm floorboards out here, no pull. Either the north thing couldn't reach this far off the map, or it had lost me, and for the first time since the doorknob I felt something loosen in my chest. Quiet. The beautiful, aching quiet I only ever got from one person, and I'd have to learn to get it from empty cabins now instead. See? I told nobody. This is fine. This is a perfectly good life. Me, a cabin, and trust issues. We'll be very happy. I hauled my bag up the sagging steps. Put my gloved hand on the cabin door. No history bleeding through the leather. Blessed nothing. Pushed it open on hinges that screamed loud enough to wake the whole mountain. The inside smelled like dust and cold ash and mouse. I've smelled worse. I've smelled Thanksgiving. I dropped my bag, found the old wood stove, and knelt to see if the flue was clear. And that is the exact undignified position I was in, on my knees with my head half in a stove, when a voice came from the dark corner behind me. You took the service road. Smart. We took the highway and doubled back. I did not scream. I want that on the record. I made a sound, but it was a dignified sound, the sound a man makes when his soul briefly exits his body and returns. I came up so fast I cracked my head on the stove and saw stars, and through the stars I saw him. He was sitting in the one chair like he owned it, like he'd owned it for years, one ankle crossed over his knee, perfectly at ease in a cabin that had been empty an hour ago. Big, not loud big, quiet big, the kind that fills a room without moving. Dark coat still beaded with rain that hadn't fallen anywhere I'd been, and his scent hit me a half-second late, the way thunder comes after lightning, cedar and cold stone and something underneath that made the broken bond in my chest sit up like a dog hearing its owner's car. I hated that, immediately, viciously. Okay, a few things, I said, backing up until the stove was between us, one hand pressed to my throbbing skull. 1. Breaking into a lady's abandoned cabin is extremely rude. 2. How? 3. And I cannot stress this enough. How? The corner of his mouth moved. Not a smile. The rumor of one. You felt us at the pump. I felt 3 sets of grubby fingerprints on a public utility. Yes. You ran south to prove you could. He said it without heat, like he was reading it off my forehead. You'd have run north if we'd pushed, so we didn't push. We waited for you to choose a direction that felt like yours. Those eyes, dark and patient and far too steady, moved over my face like he was checking off a list only he could see. It always feels better when it's your idea. Something cold walked up my spine. You let me think I was getting away. I let you rest. He uncrossed his ankle and leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and the whole cabin seemed to tilt toward him. You've had a long night, Silas. My name in his mouth stopped my heart for a full beat. I had not told him my name. Nobody in 100 miles knew where I was. And this stranger said Silas like he'd been saying it for years, like it was worn soft from use. Nope, I pointed at him with a shaking gloved finger. You don't get to know that. You don't get to say it like that. I've had exactly 1 week of people knowing me and then betraying me, and I am fully booked, thank you, come back never. I'm not here to betray you. He stood, and I swear the ceiling got closer. I'm here to bring you home. I have a home. It smells like mice and regret, and I just signed a very informal lease. You have a house, he said quietly. You buried the last thing that made it a home in your car and drove away from it. I felt that too. He tapped 2 fingers against his own chest, right where my broken bond was still throbbing, and my breath left me in a rush. Because how? How could he feel that? That was mine. That was the one private thing I had left. The 3 of us have felt you for weeks, Silas. Getting louder. Getting closer. Tonight you finally went quiet, and we thought we'd lost you. And then, he stopped. Something flickered under all that calm. Something almost raw. Then you touched that door on Willow Bend, and every one of us felt your heart break at the same time, from 40 miles away. Do you understand what that means? I did. God help me, I did. And I was not ready. Where are the other 2? I heard myself whisper. Behind me, The cabin door screamed open on its rusted hinges. "Right here," said a warmer voice. And a third, softer, delighted. "Told you he'd take the service road? You owe me $20. I turned, because apparently my night wasn't crowded enough. And there they were, filling the doorway of my sad little cabin like a trio of catalog models who'd taken a wrong turn into my breakdown. Three faces, the same face and not. That was the first thing that scrambled my brain. Triplets, born the same hour, the whole hollow had said, and here it was in the flesh, one bone structure worn three completely different ways. The one in the chair, cold and carved from patience. A second one in the doorway, broader, warmer, with a scar cutting through one eyebrow and a look on his face like he wanted to wrap me in a blanket and fight a bear for me. And behind him, grinning, hands in his pockets, the softest of the three, all mischief and cheekbones, the kind of pretty that gets away with things. "You're all," I said, and stopped, because my vocabulary had left the building. "There's three of you, in my cabin, at 2 in the morning. "It's your cabin now?" the grinning one said. "Fast lease. Extremely informal. Verbal agreement with a wood stove." I kept the stove between me and all three, because it was the only thing in the room that hadn't unsettled me yet. "Okay, names. If you're going to be this rude, you can at least be introduced while you do it." The one in the chair inclined his head. "Cassius." "Bennett," said the scarred one in the doorway, and his voice was gravel wrapped in wool. "Rory," said the grin. "The favorite." "He is not the favorite," Bennett said, without looking at him. "I'm the fun one, which in a family, this grim makes me the favorite by default." They bickered, like it was a language they'd spoken since the womb, and for one absurd second, I forgot to be afraid, because it was so ordinary, so worn in, so much like the way Nora and I used to. That thought landed wrong, and the grief came back up my throat, and Cassius, watching me the whole time, saw it happen on my face. "You're thinking about your sister," he said quietly. "Stop that," my voice cracked. "Stop reading me. That's my thing, not yours. What are you? Some kind of, mind guy?" "He can't read minds," Rory said, dropping onto the floor by the door like a cat claiming a sunbeam. "He reads faces, reads rooms, reads exactly how far he can push a person before they bolt. Which, no offense, he's been doing to you all night." "Some offense," I said. "Fair." Bennett came into the room slow, hands loose and open. "The way you approach something you don't want to spook. You're bleeding," he said. "Your head." I touched my scalp where the stove had introduced itself. My gloved fingers came back dark. "It's a graze. I've had worse. I once fixed a clock owned by a man who cried for 6 hours straight, and I felt every minute of it. This is nothing." But Bennett was already crossing the room, and something about the set of his shoulders, the pure, uncomplicated worry on that scarred face, made my sass die in my throat. He stopped an arm's length away, didn't reach, just looked at me like the small cut on my head was a personal failure of his. "May I?" he said. 2 words, "May I?" Nobody had asked me, "May I?" in a very long time. Wesley used to just reach. "I read things," I warned him. "Anything you touch, I read. Your hand on my skin, I'll get all of it. Every fight, every regret, every ugly thing you've ever done. I don't get a choice. So think real hard about whether you want a stranger knowing your whole history before you touch my face." Bennett didn't flinch. If anything, something in him steadied. "I know what you are," he said. "We've always known. Touch me. Read all of it. I'd rather you knew me true than trusted me blind." And he held out his bare hand, palm up, patient, an offering with nothing hidden behind it. I stared at that open hand like it was a live wire. Here's the thing about my gift that I never tell anyone. It isn't just history. When someone gives me their hand freely, wanting to be read, the reading goes deeper. It stops being a flood of events and becomes a person. I'd only ever done it once on purpose. With Wesley, at 19, and look how that ended. "Why would you let me do that?" I whispered. "Because you've spent your whole life reading everyone and getting read by no one," Cassius said from the chair, still not moving, letting Bennett hold the space. "You know the whole world down to its bones, and nobody knows you back. We're not asking you to trust our words. Words lied to you tonight. We're handing you the one language you can't be lied to in." My eyes stung. Traitors, both of them. I peeled off my glove. My hand shook, and I laid it against Bennett's open palm, skin to skin, and braced for the flood. It didn't flood. It poured, warm and slow, like something that had been waiting. And what I saw wasn't a life of battles, though there were battles. What I saw was rain. The same rain from my visions, real now, remembered from the inside. 3 boys standing in a downpour on the worst day of their lives, holding on to each other because there was nobody else left to hold. I felt Bennett's grief like it was my own. An old grief, a mother-shaped hole, the same shape as mine. I felt him at 8 years old swearing he'd protect his brothers even if it broke him. I felt every year after, the throne they never wanted, the weight of ruling a pack that feared them, the 3 of them going to sleep each night with one bond humming between the brothers, and one aching space where a 4th was supposed to be. And then I felt the moment they first felt me. Weeks ago, a flicker in the dark, 40 miles south, a stranger's heart, quiet and sharp and lonely, brushing against theirs in a dream none of them meant to share. I felt Bennett wake up gasping with my name already in his mouth, a name he had no way of knowing, and I felt him turn to his brothers and say, "He's real, he's real, we have to find him before something breaks him." They'd been too late by 1 week. I felt that too. They're too late. It sat in Bennett's chest like a stone. The guilt of it. We should have run faster. We should have pushed. We let him choose his own direction, and his own direction led him to that door on Willow Bend. And now look what the world did to him while we were being patient. I pulled my hand back with a gasp, and I was crying, actually crying now, undignified and clog-nosed, because I'd gone looking for a stranger's lie and found the truth instead. And the truth was that 3 men I'd never met had been grieving me before they even had me. "You're the 4th bond," I breathed. "I'm our Luna," Rory said softly, all the mischief gone. "We've been looking for you our whole lives." Outside, right on cue, the rain finally began to fall, and I stood in a stranger's cabin, with a stranger's whole soul still warm in my palm, crying like the roof had come off my life. Which, to be fair, it had. "Okay," I said, wiping my face with the back of my gloved hand, furious at my own tear ducts. "Okay, new rule. Nobody hand me their entire tragic backstory through skin contact at 2 in the morning. My heart has a bedtime." "Noted," Rory said gently. He'd gotten up off the floor without my seeing, which should have alarmed me, and now he was closer, careful, holding something out. A blanket. He'd found the one clean blanket in this whole dust-choked cabin, and he was offering it to me like a peace treaty. "You're shaking. It's not all sad. Some of it's just cold." I took the blanket. Our fingers didn't touch, and I noticed he'd arranged it that way on purpose, holding the far corner so I could grab the near one clean. He'd already learned. One reading of Bennett, and this one had watched, and clocked it, and adjusted. Don't make him read you unless he wants to. Nobody had ever learned me that fast. "Sit," Bennett said, and dragged the one chair over from where Cassius had abandoned it, and the 3 of them arranged themselves on the floor around me like I was a campfire, which was ridiculous. 3 Alpha Kings, the most feared bloodline in the Northern Territory, folded up on a filthy cabin floor because the Omega wanted the chair. "This is deeply undignified for all of you," I informed them. "We've done worse for less," Cassius said. He'd taken the spot nearest the door, back to the wall, eyes on the dark outside, and I understood without being told that this was simply where he always sat. Guard position. He probably sat like that at dinner. He probably sat like that in his own dreams. I pulled the blanket tighter. The stove had caught while I wasn't looking. Bennett must have fed it, and the little cabin was going gold and warm at the edges, and for the first time since the doorknob my hands had nothing to say. No history clawing at me, just 3 heartbeats in the room, steady, and the rain, and the fire. The quiet. I'd told myself I'd only ever get it from Wesley, and here it was, coming off 3 men I'd known for an hour, thicker and deeper than anything the bond with Wesley ever gave me. That scared me more than the breaking and entering had, because it meant the thing I'd lost tonight had maybe never been the real thing at all. "Ask," Cassius said, not looking away from the window. "You're sitting on 100 questions. It's loud. You said you can't read minds. I can read you. You've got to tell. Your left hand opens and closes when you're holding something back." He finally turned those steady eyes on me. "You've been doing it since I said your name." I looked down. My left hand was in fact opening and closing. Traitor number 3. I have so many traitors. Fine. I curled the hand into a fist and made it behave. "Here's my 100 questions boiled down to one. You felt me break tonight. From 40 miles. You knew, the second it happened, that my mate was. The word stuck. That Wesley chose my sister. You knew. So why does it feel like you're relieved? The silence changed shape. Rory and Bennett looked at Cassius. Cassius looked at me for a long moment, and something moved behind his calm, something he was deciding whether to let me see. Because a real bond can't be stolen, he said finally. It can only be given. What you had with him. He shook his head slowly. Silas, a true mate bond doesn't fade quiet the way yours did tonight. It doesn't go slack like a dropped rope. It tears. It takes skin with it. When ours breaks, if ours ever breaks, it'll feel like dying, because it'll be real. He let that sit. What broke in your chest on that porch hurt you like hell. I felt it. But it wasn't a true bond severing. It was a lie finally running out of thread. The words hit me somewhere I wasn't braced for. Because I'd felt it. The slackness. I'd stood on that porch and been almost insulted that the bond didn't snap, didn't scream, just went limp, like it had never been load-bearing at all. I'd blamed myself, thought I was too numb, too shocked, too broken to feel it properly. You're saying it was never. I couldn't finish. I'm saying you gave a real thing to someone who gave you a counterfeit back, Bennett said, low and rough. And you're the one man alive who reads counterfeits for a living, and you couldn't see it, because the one person you refused to read all the way down was the one who made your hands go quiet. His jaw worked. He knew that. He knew the quiet was the one gift you couldn't fact-check. I sat very still, because that was the cruelest, truest thing anyone had said all night. Wesley made my head quiet, and I'd loved the quiet so much I'd stopped reading him years ago, on purpose, because reading him meant the quiet went away. He'd found the one blind spot a man like me has, and he'd built a whole other life inside it. Oh, I said softly, and then, because if I didn't make a joke I was going to come apart, so he weaponized my one nice thing. Cool, cool, cool. I hate that. I hate that it's smart. Rory laughed, surprised, delighted, and the sound broke the spell just enough that I could breathe again. See? That's the thing about you, he said. Bennett wanted to find you so we could protect you. Cassius wanted to find you so the pack would finally be whole. He tilted his head, and the mischief in his face went warm and serious at once. I wanted to find you because I heard you in that dream, cracking jokes into the dark with nobody there to laugh, and I thought, God, whoever that is, he's been funny into an empty room his entire life. Somebody should be there to laugh. Nobody had ever said anything like that to me. I opened my mouth, and nothing came out. My left hand opened and closed. Cassius saw it. Of course he did. There it is, he murmured. What are you holding back now? I looked at the three of them, gold in the firelight, unbearable, and I told the truth, which is a thing I almost never do. That I want to stay, I whispered, and that wanting things is how I got here. For one perfect second, none of us moved. The fire ticked, the rain came down, and Bennett reached out, slow, giving me every chance to stop him, and laid his warm hand over my curled fist. Not to read, just to hold. That's when Cassius went rigid. His head snapped to the window. Every trace of calm left his body at once, and the temperature in the room dropped like a stone down a well. Headlights, he said. 2 vehicles. Coming up the service road. My blood went cold. Nobody knows this road. Cassius turned and looked at me, and for the first time all night, the man who read every room was afraid. Somebody told them, Cassius said, and the whole warm gold room went to ice. I was up and off the chair before I decided to be, blanket pooling at my feet, my heart doing something violent and fast. Nobody knows this road. I fixed the plow guy's radio. That's it. I've told exactly 0 people. I didn't even tell it to myself out loud until an hour ago. 2 sets of headlights. Bennett was already at the window beside Cassius, and the change in him was total. The blanket and bare softness burned off. Something older and harder standing in its place. Moving slow. They know the road's rough. They've been here before. Or someone drew them a map, Rory said. He wasn't grinning now. He'd gone to the door, palm flat against it, listening. Silas, who did you tell where you were going tonight? No one. I told no one. That was the entire point of disappearing. It doesn't work if you RSVP. But my hands had gone cold inside the gloves. because a memory was surfacing, small and stupid and sharp. The diner. Theo across the table, stealing my fries. Take off a glove. Touch that. Sliding Wesley's keychain at me, watching my face when I wouldn't. And earlier still, weeks of it, Theo, the only one who kept asking where I was, how I was, what I was going to do. Theo, who always noticed first. No, I said out loud, to myself, to the cabin. No, not him. He's my best friend. He's a beta. He doesn't even like Wesley. Who? Cassius said sharply. It doesn't matter. He wouldn't. The first vehicle's lights swung across the boarded window, and in the sweep of them, Cassius stepped back from the glass, and I watched him do the math I didn't want done. 1 truck, 1 car behind it. 6, maybe 7 people. That's not a search party, Silas. Nobody brings 7 people to find 1 runaway Omega. His eyes cut to me. That's a party that already knew exactly what they'd find when they got here. They knew we'd be with you. The cold in my hands climbed to my wrists, because that was the piece that didn't fit. Nobody knew about the Kings. I hadn't known about the Kings until an hour ago, so whoever was coming up that road wasn't chasing a heartbroken Omega. They were chasing 4 people. They knew the 3 most feared alphas in the north would be sitting in a collapsing cabin at the dead end of an unmarked road, and they'd brought enough bodies to do something about it. Silas. Bennett's voice was very careful. The photograph. I blinked. What? When you emptied your house. You told me, in the reading, it goes both ways. I felt what you were feeling. You took one thing you never let yourself read. Your mother's photo. It went in the bag first. He nodded at my bag, slumped by the stove. You've carried it your whole life and never scanned it. Why? Because I wasn't ready to feel her last day. What does that have to I stopped. Because Cassius had gone still in a new way. Because Rory had turned from the door. Because all 3 of them were looking at me with the same dawning, dreadful thing on their identical different faces. And Bennett said, so gently it hurt, what if the photograph isn't about her last day? What if it's about ours? I don't know why I moved. The lights were climbing the road, Boots would be on the steps in a minute, and instead of running, I dropped to my knees by the bag and tore it open and pulled out the little framed photo I'd protected from my own hands for 24 years. My mother, young, laughing, holding a baby that was me, the only picture I had of her, the one thing in the world I'd never let myself know. I peeled off both gloves. Silas, there's no time, Cassius started. Then it'll be fast, I snapped, and I pressed both bare palms flat to the glass and let it in. It did not pour. It detonated. My mother's laugh, yes, warm and real, the sound of her I'd never gotten to keep. But underneath it, layered into the same afternoon, was rain. The rain. 3 boys in a downpour holding on to each other. And my mother was there. My mother was kneeling in the mud in front of 3 orphaned children with a newborn on her hip. And she was crying, and she was making a promise. I'll keep him safe. I'll keep him away from all of it, until he's grown. Nobody can know what he is. Nobody can know he's yours. The photo showed one day. My gift gave me the whole thing anyway, the way it does when the truth is load-bearing. I was not hidden from the world by accident. I was hidden on purpose. My mother took me and ran, 40 miles south into a nothing-packed town, and buried a King's Luna in a repair shop and a pair of gloves, because something in the north wanted me dead before I could ever be found. The 3 boys in the rain hadn't lost me by being too late. They'd lost me because someone stole me, and my mother died keeping the secret of where. Oh, I breathed. The photo was shaking in my hands. Oh, that's so much worse than a cheating mate. Silas Bennett was on his knees in front of me now, hands hovering, not daring to touch me while I was mid-read. What did you see? I've been hidden my whole life, I said, and my voice came out flat and strange and far away. Not from Wesley, not from the Hollow, from the north, from whoever's coming up that road right now, because they've been looking for me for 24 years, and tonight I broke a bond loud enough for the whole territory to feel it. I looked up at 3 faces that had gone white. I didn't lead you to me. I lit a flare. My heart broke, and every alpha in 100 miles felt exactly where the missing Luna was standing. The truck door slammed outside, then another, boots on gravel, and a voice, familiar, wrong, calling up toward the cabin through the rain, and it wasn't Wesley's voice. And it wasn't a stranger's. It was Theo's. Silas, my best friend called, warm as ever, easy as a Sunday. Come on out, buddy. Nobody has to get hurt. I've been looking out for you for years. You know that. Just come on out and bring your kings with you. The bottom dropped out of my whole life. He knew, I whispered. He's known the entire time he wasn't my friend. He was my hands closed around the photo so hard the frame cracked. He was watching me. For them, for 24 years he was the leash. Cassius drew a blade from somewhere inside his coat, and his voice, when it came, was the coldest thing I have ever heard. How many friends did they put around you, Silas? He said quietly, if they went to the trouble of one. And outside, in the rain, more than one set of boots started up the steps, and something in me that had been running all night finally, mercifully stopped. I stood up. The cracked photo of my mother was still in my bare hands, and her promise was still ringing through me. Nobody can know what he is. And I understood, standing in that cold and freezing room, that she hadn't hidden me because I was fragile. She'd hidden me because I was dangerous. You don't spend 24 years leashing something harmless. You don't put a best friend on a boy for 2 decades unless you're afraid of what he'll become if he ever finds out who he is. Well, I'd found out. Bad night for everyone's plans. Silas, get behind us, Bennett said, rising, putting his big body between me and the door. No, I said. Cassius's head turned. This isn't the moment for the sass. It's not sass. My voice had gone strange and steady, that far-off flatness, and my hands, my traitorous, honest hands, had stopped shaking entirely. Theo's been touching my life for 24 years. My shop, my tools, my car. My best friend put his hands on everything I own, over and over, for my whole life. I looked at the 3 of them. You think that leaves nothing behind? You handed me your souls tonight through one touch. Imagine what a man leaves in 24 years of pretending. Rory got it first. His eyes went wide. You can read him. I can read everything he's ever touched. I set the photo down on the chair, gentle, like tucking my mother in. And he touched me for 2 decades thinking I'd never turn it on him. Same mistake Wesley made. Everybody keeps betting their whole life on my one blind spot, and nobody stops to ask what happens the day I finally look. The door burst open. Theo came in first, because of course he did, hands up, that warm, easy grin on his face that I'd trusted since we were kids, and behind him crowded 4, 5, 6 shapes, big ones, alphas, rain-soaked and armed and calm, in the way that only comes from doing a thing many times before. Buddy, Theo said, and he had the nerve, the absolute nerve, to sound fond. You look terrible. Rough night? I heard about Wesley. I'm so sorry, man, Was that you too? I asked. The grin flickered. Just a hair. Wesley and Nora, I said. Did you arrange that, or did you just let it happen? Because you needed me to break, didn't you? You've been my friend for 24 years, and I never once had a heartbreak big enough for the North to feel me. So you needed one. You needed a bond loud enough to snap, so they'd know exactly where the lost Luna was standing. My voice didn't rise. That was the scariest part, to me, that it wouldn't rise. You built me a heartbreak, Theo. You pointed my mate at my sister like a gun, and you waited. Silas. His hands were still up, still easy, but the easy was cracking now. You don't understand the whole picture. I kept you alive. 24 years I kept you off their radar. If it wasn't me watching you, it had been someone who didn't care whether you lived. I'm the reason you got a childhood. I'm the reason you got Wesley at all. You want a thank you card? I said. From the boy you kept in a box. I want you to come home. And there it was. The crack going all the way. The warmth curdling into something desperate. You have no idea what you are, what you're worth, what the North will pay to have the Luna, who can read any lie ever told. You think I did this for me? I did this for both of us. Come home, and I promise you'll never want for anything again. Behind him, the armed men shifted, and I watched Cassius track every one of them without moving his head, and I watched Bennett's hands flex, and I watched Rory drift one silent step sideways toward the wood stove and the iron poker leaning against it, and I understood we were about 4 seconds from the room turning red. So I did the thing nobody expected. I stepped forward, past Bennett's arm, and I held out my bare hand to Theo. Okay, I said. Take me home then. Shake on it. Theo blinked. That's the deal, right? You always wanted me to trust you, so trust me back. Shake my hand, tell me it'll all be fine, and I'll walk out that door with you. Quiet as you like. No kings, no mess. I kept my hand out, steady, palm bare, and I let my voice go soft and sweet and vicious. Come on, buddy. It's just a handshake. What are you afraid of? And I watched him understand. I watched Theo, who had known me for 24 years, who knew exactly what my hands did, who had spent 2 decades never once letting me read him on purpose, look down at my open palm and go gray. Because he couldn't. If he touched me, I'd get all of it. Every name he answered to, every person he answered to, the whole shape of the thing in the north that had wanted a baby dead, 24 years of secrets soaked into one man's skin, handed to me in a single breath. And then I'd know everything. And knowing everything is the one thing his masters could never allow. Don't, one of the alphas behind him said sharply. Don't touch him. And that, right there, that single order, told me everything the handshake would have. Because Theo wasn't in charge. Theo had never been in charge. Theo was just the leash. And the hand that held the leash had just spoken from the back of the room, and my head snapped up to find the face that went with the voice. I knew it. I knew that face. Older now, grayer, but I'd felt it before, an hour ago, layered into my mother's photograph, kneeling in the mud in the rain. One of the shapes I'd assumed was grief. Not one of the 3 boys, the 4th adult, the one who'd been there the day my mother made her promise, the one she'd been running from. You, I breathed. Hello, Silas, the old alpha said, stepping into the light, and his scent reached me, and my whole body recoiled because I knew it. I'd always known it. It was in the walls of the only home I'd ever had. You have your mother's hands, pity. She used them to hide you from me too. Cassius made a sound I'd never heard an alpha make. Not a growl, a word, broken in half. Uncle, he said, and the whole floor dropped out of the world. You're supposed to be dead, Bennett said, hoarse. We buried you. We stood in the rain and we buried you. You buried a story, the old alpha said pleasantly. The same way you were told a story about a Luna who died before you could find him. He smiled at me, warm as Theo, and I finally understood where Theo had learned it. Everyone's been so busy grieving the wrong graves. Now my patient nephews. Step away from what's mine, the old alpha said, and every man in that room shifted their weight to obey him. That was my first clue. Not the blades, not the numbers. The way 6 armed alphas leaned toward one gray old man like plants toward a window. He didn't rule them with fear. He ruled them the way scent rules a room, deep and automatic, a thing that got into you before you could vote on it. My mother had run 40 miles to keep me out of that pull. I finally understood why. Yours, I repeated. I stepped forward again, past Bennett, past Cassius, and I felt all 3 kings go rigid behind me because I was walking toward the danger instead of away from it. And that broke every rule an Omega is supposed to follow. Good. I've never been good at rules. See, that's the word that's bothering me. Mine. You said it about a baby you tried to kill. You said it about my mother's grave. And now you're saying it about me, in a cabin I broke into, on a road nobody knows. I tilted my head. For a man who owns so much, you sure spend a lot of time chasing things that ran away from you. Theo flinched. The old alpha did not. Your mother stole you, he said, patient, warm, poisonous. You were promised to this pack the day you were born. A Luna who reads the truth off anything he touches. Do you know what that's worth? You could have ended every war before it started. You could have made me unstoppable. Instead, she buried you in a repair shop and let you fix watches. His lip curled. Come home and be what you were made to be. Here's the thing about being made to be something, I said. I already am. And I moved. Not toward him. I'm sassy, not suicidal. I dropped, fast, and slapped both bare palms flat against the cabin floor. The old wood, the floorboards that had gone warm, and pointed me north all night, and I stopped fighting the one instinct I'd spent my whole life muzzling. I let it all in. Everything the floor had ever felt, everything the walls remembered, every man who'd ever set foot in this territory, soaked into the ground like rain, 24 years of it, 100 years, and I reached past the cabin and out through the earth the way you'd follow a wire back to the socket, and I found them, 6 alphas in the room, their histories, their fears, The specific ugly thing each one had done that they'd never told the others. And the old man at the center, lit up like a wound, his whole rotten scheme laid open to me in one endless, breathless second. I didn't attack him. I didn't have to. I stood up, and I opened my mouth, and I told the room the truth. You, I said, pointing at the biggest alpha by the door. He promised you your brother's territory when this was done. He promised the same territory to him. I pointed at the next. Both of you, same land. He's been lying to every single one of you for years, and I can feel exactly which lie he told which man, because I just read the ground you're all standing on. I turned. You, in the back. Your sister's still alive. He told you she died in the northern raids to keep you loyal. She's in a border pack 40 miles from here, and he's known the whole time. The room changed. That's the thing nobody tells you about a man who rules through lies. His whole army is just a stack of secrets he keeps separated. And I am the one weapon in the world that reads every secret at once and hands them out for free. He's lying, the old alpha said, but his voice had climbed half a step, and 6 men had heard it climb. The Omega will say anything to. I can't lie, I said simply. That's the whole problem with me. Ask your nephews. Ask Theo. Everyone in my life bet their entire plan on the fact that I'd never turn my hands on them, because the day I do, there's nowhere left to hide. Your whole kingdom is built on keeping men apart from the truth. I spread my arms. And you brought them all into one small room. With me. The biggest alpha looked at his neighbor. His neighbor looked back. And the old man's pull, that deep automatic thing that got into you before you could vote on it, cracked right down the middle. Because you cannot lead men who have all just learned exactly how you played them. It didn't turn red. It turned quiet. One by one, the boots that had come up the steps to take me went back down them, and each alpha who left took a piece of the old man's power with him, until it was just Theo and the uncle and the 4 of us. Silas, Theo tried, one last time, hands out, that warm grin in tatters. Buddy, I really did keep you alive. I know, I said, and I meant it, which was the worst part. That's why you get to walk out, instead of getting carried. Go find whoever you actually are, under 24 years of watching me. I hope he's better than this. Now get out of my cabin. Verbal lease. It's ironclad. He went. Which left the old man, alone, in a room with 3 kings who'd buried him, and 1 Luna, who'd just dismantled his whole world with his bare hands. Cassius stepped up beside me, blade low, and for once he let me feel what he was feeling through the inch of air between us, grief and rage and 24 years of a stolen family, and I reached over without looking, and closed my bare hand around his. I read him, on purpose, and I let him feel me read him, let him feel that I'd seen the whole ugly shape of what his uncle took from all of us and chose to stand here anyway. He doesn't get to be mine, I said quietly, to Cassius, to all 3 of them. He doesn't get to own the word. Let the border packs have him. Let his own men decide what he's worth now that nobody's keeping their secrets apart. I squeezed Cassius's hand. We don't win by becoming him. We win by being the thing he spent his whole life afraid of. A family that actually knows each other. The uncle opened his mouth. Bennett stepped forward and simply took him by the collar, gentle as anything, and walked him out into the rain, to the men who no longer worked for him. Rory shut the door, and then it was just the 3 of them, and me, and the gold light, and the storm easing off the roof. So, Rory said, dropping onto the floor by the stove, like the whole night hadn't happened. Luna, you still leasing this dump, or can we take you somewhere with real beds and worse jokes? I looked at 3 faces I'd known for one night and a whole life. My hands were quiet, quieter than Wesley ever made them, quiet like a thing that had finally stopped running. My hands have never lied to me, and for the first time in 24 years, the truth they handed me was this. I was home, I was known, and I was chosen, all the way down, by 3 men who'd handed me their souls before they ever asked for mine. Yeah, I said, and I let them see me smile. Take me home. I've got 24 years of jokes saved up, and finally somebody's here to laugh. Outside, the rain stopped. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed it, you'll definitely love the next one. It's even crazier and more intriguing than you can imagine. Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned. The next story drops soon.